The book of Jonah, chapter 1. The book of Jonah, chapter 1, reads as follows. Hear now these words. Jonah, chapter 1, verse 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me.
All right.
But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found the ship bound for that port. And after paying the fare, he went aboard and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. And then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, and such a violent storm arose that the ship threatened to break up. And all the sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God. And they threw the cargo into the sea to lighten the ship. But Jonah had gone below deck, where he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The captain went to him and said, "How can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe he will take notice of us, and we will not perish." Then the sailors said to each other, "Come, and let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity." They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. And so they asked him, "Tell us, who is responsible for making all of this trouble for us? What do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you?" He answered, "I'm a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land." This terrified them, and they asked, "What have you done?" They knew he was running from the Lord, because he had already told them so. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading of his word. I want to talk about reason and purpose. Reason and purpose. So let me begin by asking you a question. Are you in church today by accident? Or is there a reason for you to be here today? Is there a reason and purpose for your attendance? On the opposite side, there is a reason for your absence. Sometimes we think that being in church is all up to us. We think that we just got up in the morning and we decided that I would just show up at Progressive today. That I would just come around as if you had nothing else better to do. But I want to help you to understand that God orders all of our steps. And sometimes what you think may be happenstance is filling into God's ordering of your steps. Do you believe that there is divine structure, or do you believe that everything just happens happenstancely? Who is ordering your steps is the question. Or are you trying to order your own steps? Are you even aware that God is ordering your steps? I know sometimes you may look and say, "But brother preacher, why have things happened the way they've happened? And why has life turned out the way it has?" I still want to put a footnote and to remind you that God is ordering your steps. Some of us have an Invictus mentality, believing that you are the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. I want to tell you that that's the biggest lie ever told. That you are not the master of your fate. I bet if you were the master of your fate, we'd have a bunch of Bentleys and Rolls Royces out in the parking lot right now. If you were the captain of your soul, there's no telling where you'd be right now. the world wants you to believe this. The world wants you to believe that you are where you are because you're smart, because you're well connected, because you have money, because you know the right people. And I want to take a few minutes to destroy all of that today. And say you are where you are here because God has his hand on your life. Amen, somebody. Am I here for a reason? Are you here for a reason? And if you're here for a reason, do you understand your purpose of being affiliated with Progressive Baptist Church? Do you understand that God has given you certain skills and certain abilities and certain experiences that he can use in the body of Christ? Do you understand? The story of Jonah is that Jonah didn't understand reason and Jonah didn't understand purpose. You know the story. God said, look here, Jonah, I want you to go and preach to the Ninevites. Now you must understand that the Ninevites were the arch enemy of the Israelites. Jonah was friends with the king of Israel. And so his mindset was, even if I go down and I'm successful at preaching to the Ninevites, they will still be our enemy. So he goes down, and you know the Ninevites was from the hood. You do know that. So the Ninevites from the hood. And Jonah has all these problems. He said, I don't want to go down to the hood and preach, because if I go down there and they respond to the gospel, they will still be the enemy of Israel. So you know the story. He says, I'm not going down there. And God, you can't make me. Now that's problem number one, isn't it? So he says to the Lord, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to Nineveh. I'm going down to Joppa. I'm going to purchase a ticket, and I'm going to catch the first boat that's going to Tarshish. You know Tarshish, next to Miami. It's warm, it's nice. You know Tarshish, they got the best ribs in town. You know Tarshish, it's a nice place. It's anywhere better than Nineveh. So he goes down to Joppa, gets his ticket, goes to Tarshish. Strange thing happens on his way to Tarshish. Is that the ship encounters a storm. And the storm just comes out of nowhere. A big ship in a big storm. And God so has it that he pulls up a big fish by a big ship in a big storm. The big men throw Jonah over into the water. And just so happened, a big fish is coming upside a big ship in a big storm. Jonah says to them, I am running from the Lord. Now when you read this text, it's almost as if Jonah was happy about this. It's as if Jonah took delight in saying, I am not going to do it. And some of us live our lives in contradiction to what the Lord wants us to do. Have you ever been in an argument with somebody that you really don't care for, and you don't have to raise your hand, don't even look at your neighbor right now, and the Lord told you to apologize? How many of you want to say to the Lord, but I ain't did nothing wrong? Why would I have to apologize to them? Nothing wrong. And the Lord said, no, this is what I want you to do. And you said, no, I'm going to Joppa. I'm going to Tarshish, and I'm just not going to do it. And the Lord will slow walk you down. The Lord orders your steps. The Lord orders my steps. The Lord orders our steps. That we are subject unto the Lord. There are some stories in our congregation. I've listened to people talk about if they had been at the stoplight just a few minutes earlier, that they would have been in an accident. I've heard some of you tell the story that you decided to go to the doctor, and not for your normal visit, but you just wanted to go to the doctor. And glad you did. Because you determined a 90% plus blockage in your heart. I've heard those stories. Why am I hearing those stories? Because that's reminding me that God orders your steps. God orders our steps according to his word. So here was Jonah. And Jonah said, look, man, I am not going to do it. Jonah was quite the anointed preacher. But you know, you can be anointed and stubborn at the same time. You can be gifted and conflicted at the same time. When I was growing up at Second Baptist, we had a minister by the name of George Bell. And George Bell was one of the staff ministers there at Second Baptist in Elgin. And George was from a little town in Mississippi called Winona, Mississippi. George was gifted, but George was conflicted. George saw God through very narrow lens. And over time, God was able to expand those lenses. But George used to say some crazy stuff. One time he told my dad, he said, Pastor, your preaching really doesn't move me. But I enjoy you as a person. Now George said that in the front and in the presence of our organist at the time, who was equally animated. Our organist, his name was Michael Clark. And though you may not know Michael Clark, but Michael used to love listening to Richard Pryor. I'll give you a hint about Brother Michael. And Michael used to always have a big wad of keys on him all the time. Whenever you see Michael, you thought he was a jailer, man. He had all these keys. Here was Reverend Bell telling my father, I really don't care for your preaching, but you're a nice person. Well, the next time that Daddy had Reverend Bell up to preach, George got off the organ and went downstairs and didn't come back upstairs until the choir was getting ready to sing the invitation. Reverend Bell had the audacity to ask him, where did you go? Michael, being Michael, said, you know, your preaching just don't move me. And he said, I hope you didn't think that your preaching moved everybody. Sometimes you can be gifted and conflicted at the same time. God orders our steps. And I want you to leave church today with the understanding that it is not your smarts, it is not your good looks, it is not who you know, it is not your money, but by the grace of God, you are here today because God orders your steps. Is anybody here that's lived long enough and you know without a shadow of a doubt that the Lord has opened some doors in your life? Is anybody in church today, you're still scratching your head, trying to say, my soul looks back and wonder how I made it up? Is anybody here that when you look back over your journey, God has ordered you just like Jonah, and that he's put you in a position that your family couldn't help you, your friends couldn't help you, and you just had to say, God, I got to thank you because it was only you. Listen to the story. So they throw Jonah over, and he's in the belly of the whale for 3 days. 3 days. The whale didn't devour for 3 days. You know, God has a way of getting our attention, doesn't he? So for 3 days, he's in the belly of the whale. Now, you know, I'm thinking that this must not have been a hungry whale, because he would have been gone in a matter of hours. But in the belly of a whale for 3 days. He's praying to God. God, if you get me out of here. Anybody ever prayed that prayer? If you just get me through this one, Lord, you won't have to worry about me on Sunday, Lord. Just, Lord, and And some of y'all can speak in tongues when you get through praying. Oh boy, you get it going. And he said, Lord, if you just get me through this. Get me through this. And you know the story. The well threw him up on dry land. So for a moment, when you read the story, Jonah gets it. That my steps are ordered by the Lord. That my gifts are given by the Lord. That my money, I'm going to meddle just a little bit, is provided by the Lord. That my health is sustained by the Lord. The foreparents used to say, he's my all and all. So Jonah gets it. Jonah gets it. He's grumbling. He said, well, I'm going to go down here and preach to the Ninevites. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't care for them. He's not feeling it. And Jonah gets mad because the Ninevites respond to the gospel. Jonah gets upset because the Ninevites accept the gospel. They acknowledge the one Lord, and they come in droves to repent. And so here Jonah goes again. He gets upset. The Bible says that he moves to the outskirts of the city because he didn't want to deal with it. Puts up a shack. And the Lord said, I'm going to have mercy on him. I'm going to have mercy. He's a little hard-headed, a little stubborn. I'm going to deal with him now. And he allows a tree to grow so that there would be shade over his house. He's still upset. He's still upset. Now, I'm going to get personal here for a minute. I told the Lord I wasn't going to preach. My granddaddy was a preacher. My daddy was a preacher. 4 uncles was a preacher. I just figured, Lord, don't you think there's enough preachers in the family? Plus, I saw firsthand how preachers are treated. And I just said, Lord, no, Lord, this ain't for me. I'm too cool for this. This is not for me. And the Lord had a way of slow walking me down. Every school I applied to because I wanted to go to law school from college turned me down. I couldn't figure it out. Because the Lord was reminding me that my steps are not my steps. Your steps are not your steps. But they're ordered by the Lord. On Sunday morning, when it's time to come to the house of the Lord, your steps are ordered. I guarantee you that the devil will give you all kinds of reasons any given Sunday why you should not come to church. And there's some folk who will call you on Sunday morning. They ain't called you all week. They'll call you 15 minutes before you're ready to walk out the door and say, girl, do you know what's going on? Chick, I ain't heard from you all week. Oh, yeah. The devil is going to use you to keep me from coming to the house of the Lord. The devil will disrupt your spirit. I was on the highway this morning, man ran in front of me, I almost lost my mind. I had to regroup my sermon. He will do whatever he can. But the Lord orders your steps. Some of you, the Lord this week will use you to pick up the phone and call someone because the Lord will lay that person on your heart. And he says, I want you to call them, check on them, and see how they're doing. And sometimes you got to give the Lord all your line. But they didn't call me. And why do you want me to call them? And I ain't heard from them. Stop it.
That's right.
Because the Lord is ordering your steps.
Amen. Yes, he is. Amen.
You can't just say, Lord, order my steps for something good. Yeah, order my steps to Fifth Third Bank so they can give me some money. Yeah. Order my steps to the job that I want. Order my steps to whatever is good. No, the Lord says, I'm ordering your steps, period.
Amen.
instrument. I'm not yours.
All right. Say it.
So Jonah gets upset after Ninevites. Gets saved. Couldn't handle it. Gets upset. Ninevites get saved. You would think that would be a happy moment. Jonah gets so upset until the Lord said, well, I guess I got to deal with you. The first time I had to put you over in a well. Then I had to let the well spew you out. Second time, you move out of the city. You live in a hut because you don't want to deal with the Ninevites. You don't even want to hear their testimony. I put a tree over your house so that the scorching sun. And the record says that the Lord had to kill the tree. And after Jonah got hot, he figured something out. That maybe I ought to stop playing with the Lord. I'm almost done here. Jonah said, maybe I ought to stop playing with the Lord and get right with God. You missed it. Jonah figured out. He said, maybe I ought to stop playing with the Lord and get right with God. How many of us are in church today when times are rough, we'll say, Lord, if you just get me out of this one, if you just make a way out of this one, I'll serve you till I die. And then we go back to the doctor. And he tells us that the test results are looking pretty good. And life is, you're feeling wonderful, and it's springtime, and life is looking good. And oh, by the way, money is better. And everything else is more important than the Lord. Your worship drops off. Your praise is tempered. Because you're wearing better clothes now. You can't get sweat on those clothes. I'm feeling you.
Come on now.
And you fail to realize where the Lord has brought you.
All right.
And how the Lord has sustained you. And how the Lord is preparing you to be a minister even in your own context, in your own family. That God is using you. You thought your experiences were just experiences, but God, everything that you've gone through and everything that you're going through, God is using those experiences for you to be a blessing to someone else. And I just feel the word that God is saying, somebody in church today, it's time to stop playing with God. And say, God, I'm for real. You brought me from a long way. You have called me, and I will be faithful. What you've called me to do. My good friend, Judge Wendell Griffin, Little Rock, Arkansas. He's a judge at the federal level. And for years, Judge Griffin would tell you that, man, I thought it was all about me. Went to college, Morehouse graduate, finished law school, University of Arkansas. Went on to be an attorney, worked for the state, now a federal judge. Doing well, life is well. As a federal judge, the Lord called him to preach. And he's like, you have got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. You mean you want me to preach? And Wendell will tell you that for a long time, he ran from that call. And every door had closed.
All right.
In fact, at one point, he was falsely accused and was removed from the bench until the investigation was over. And Wendell will tell you that during that time, some of the judges that he thought was his best friends and close friends turned their back on him. In fact, he couldn't even go into the building where his office was. And his attorney that was representing him said at one time, I don't think this is going to turn out too well. But like Jonah, he said, Lord, I see now. It's not about me. It's not about where I went to school. It's not about who I knew. It's not about my connection. It's all about you. And Wendell will tell you, as he stood on the other side of the judge's stand for the first time in his life, that here was an all-white jury, African-American judge, one of the few that's there in Arkansas. That jury came back and said, not guilty, and restored him to being a judge to this day. He said, don't play with the Lord. The Lord will order your steps. The Lord is the reason that you have all that you have. Don't let nobody fool you. Don't let nobody make you think that you're that smart and you have that much money. At some point, somebody ought to say, I'm here today because the Lord has made a way. I'm here today because the Lord has ordered my steps. I'm here today by the goodness of the Lord. I want to stand and give the Lord his praise and his honor and his due.
Yes, God.
Unlike Jonah. Lord, you don't have to put me in the well. You don't have to kill the tree that gives shade over the house. I get it. I'm yours, Lord. All that I have, I'm yours, Lord. Is there a witness here? I'm yours, Lord. The song says, try me and see. I'm yours, Lord. You look back over your life. The Lord has blessed you. And he's brought you from a mighty long way. Oh, you look back over your journey today. The Lord has blessed you and brought you from a mighty long way. Is anybody in church today that was sick and now you're well? The Lord has brought you from a mighty long way. Is there anybody in church today that you didn't know how you were going to make it? But the Lord picked you up. And the Lord turned you up. He's ordered your steps. Yes. The Lord is good. And his mercy endures forever. He said, Jonah, go on down to Nineveh and preach. No, Lord, I ain't feeling Nineveh today. Go on down and preach. No, Lord, I'm not about to go to Nineveh. You can't tell me what to do. I'm going to Joppa. I'm going to get me a ticket to Tarshish. And I'm going to chill out in Tarshish. No, Jonah, I got a call on your life. No, Jonah, I got my hands on your life. No, Jonah, the reason you're not dead is because my hand is upon your life. Jonah, you can run, brother, but you can't hide. You can run, but you can't hide. He goes down there, finally gets it, and then he gets upset. He gets upset because he doesn't understand that this is not my business or our business. This is the Lord's business. This is the Lord's business. That's what Reverend George Bell finally learned. That God places you in all kinds of settings. And George would later say, under T.E. Bedford, my ministry grew. And George would also learn that he better not ever mess with T.E. Bedford as long as Mike Clark was in there. He knew that God would order your steps. But you've got to be obedient to the will of God.
That's it.
Somebody's here today, you're in church, the Lord has been speaking to your heart on a variety of issues. The Lord has a plan and a purpose. There's reason for your life. There's a reason you're alive today. There's a reason that you are not in that accident last week. There's a reason that God has protected you. I talked to a woman this week and she said, Pastor, I lost my job when they shut down, and she said, but I can't tell you how we're making it. But she said, you know, nothing's behind. kids are not hungry. And she said, I went to pay their tuition, and they told me that we were awarded a grant that we didn't even see. So you got to understand that the Lord will order your steps. And if the Lord is ordering your steps, and I believe He is, then you need to be obedient to how the Lord is ordering your steps. Is He speaking to you today? Is there something that He says, look, here's what I want you to do. Here's where I want you to be. Here's who I want you to minister to. Are you like Jonah? I ain't trying to do that. I don't want to do that. You know, God has blessed you with certain skills. It bothers me when people come to church and the only thing they think they can do as church is just raise hell.
All right now. Say it again. All right. Yeah.
God hasn't saved you for that. God hasn't blessed you for that. Whatever your skills are, whatever your talents are, God expects you to use those talents for the building up of the kingdom of God. Amen, somebody? Amen. God has blessed you for a reason. He's called you for a purpose. Listen, I don't know who I'm talking to today, but I believe you're in church. God has said, I'm ordering your steps. I'm ordering your steps, your life, ministry. Maybe your role is just to be a minister within your own family. Maybe God is going to use you to deal with some folk in your own family. Yes. You got to make sure that all your issues with them is out the way, because God's going to use you. That you're not telling God, look, no, I ain't talking to Pookie no more, because Pookie gets on my nerve, and you know that. God's going to say, no. I'm ordering your steps. I'm ordering your steps according to my word. Jesus died for you.
Yes.
He's given his life for you. For you to be a minister.
Amen.
For you to do his will. Not to be difficult. Not to be rebellious. Not to reject the Lord's claim on your life. Jonah. The beauty here is that when Jonah allowed himself to be used by the Lord, a whole town got saved.
All right.
Just think of what can happen in your own life.
Yeah.
You say, Lord, you blessed me with some things, some talent, some skills. Let me not be selfish. Let me not be self-centered.
Yes.
Let me not be rebellious. Use me.
Yes.
The doors of church are open for you right now. If you're here today, and you say, Pastor, I don't have a church home. I'm not connected with any congregation. I believe the Lord is speaking to you that it's time for you to have a church where you can grow spiritually. If you're not in church today, say, Pastor, I have no place, but I'm worshiping. We extend the doors of this church open for you to come and grow spiritually in the Lord. If you're here today, the doors of the church are open. Every Sunday, our altar is open. The choir sings softly. Our altar is open. Maybe you're in church today and you say, Pastor, you pray with me and pray for me. I need the Lord to order some things in my life. Some areas in my life that I'm struggling with. And I've realized that I just can't order them by myself. And in some cases, I've been moving in the wrong direction. This altar is open for you as we come to pray. Every Sunday, I extend this offer that we come to pray. And it's not because it's a part of our liturgy, but it's a time in which for you to hear the word of God and to respond. You know your life. You know what God has laid on your heart. Maybe there's those moments you say, Pastor, I'm just like Jonah. But I want to follow his will. I want to follow his will and his purpose. is bowed, every eye is closed. Lord, I thank you. Thank you for your word today.
Yes, thank you, Lord.
For Lord, whatever you've placed on our heart, for all of us have been called to ministry. All of us have been called to serve you in some way.
Yes, Lord.
All of us. There's a reason, and all of us, Lord, there's a purpose that you've placed in our lives. And I pray, Lord, that you would help us to respond to your will. Take the Jonah out of us. Take the resistance, the rebellion out of us. Show us. And then, Lord, some of us have had some tough experiences, some painful experiences. And Lord, I want you to give us a peace that all things have and will work together for good. That you're going to use every painful experience, and that's going to be our witness, and that will be our testimony for somebody else, to encourage somebody else. Open our hearts. Move us beyond any pain or any bitterness, and Lord, prepare us for your work. It's not about us. It's about you. It's about your glory. Lord, every preacher in this congregation, every deacon, Lord, use us for your work, for your ministry. Every member of this church, Lord, use us for your work and your ministry.